On this episode of Backtrack, we're digging into the history of Brainerd Motorsports Park in Ringgold, Georgia. This place has tons of history dating back to 1957, and it's still going strong to this day. Be sure to stick around to the end to see a highlight reel with some of my favorite moments and wild rides at Brainerd Motorsports Park. Before I get too carried away, I want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and always feel free to leave a comment below, especially if you have a memory from Brainerd Motorsports Park or any of the local tracks here around the Chattanooga area. This track has been known by several names through the years. A lot of people referred to it as Hickson Drag Strip in its original configuration. Then it changed to Brainerd Optimist Drag Strip, and now it's known as Brainerd Motorsports Park. But for a lot of guys that's been around for years, we just call it Brainerd. I'd like to say a special thanks to Wayne Holland, Richard McFalls, and Larry Rose for these historic pictures and videos. It really helped me put the story of this track together. During the 1950s, drag racing and hot rodding was still relatively new, but it was gaining traction all across the country. California got a head start on a lot of places, but in the Southeast, there was a huge boom in popularity when it came to building hot rods, anything fast. And the downside to that is that there were not very many facilities where you could safely go fast. So a lot of guys were out there on the street, they were messing around with their hot rods, and it was causing some problems with local law enforcement, and that led to the construction of purpose-built drag strips. And for this area, the Chattanooga, Tennessee area, 1957 was when that really kicked off. It was up to one of the local car clubs called the Roadmasters to sort of develop a plan to take the racing off of the street and put it in a safer environment. So one of the leaders of the Roadmasters Car Club, his name was John, everybody called him Buddy, Houts. Buddy Houts presented the idea of a drag strip to city officials, and it was met with some resistance, although the law enforcement wanted to get this racing and this hot rodding off the street, so they were willing to work with them. However, there was no financial backing, and the Roadmasters Car Club, it was made up of young men. It wasn't exactly big businessmen who had lots of money. So, there was kind of an issue there. There was a roadblock in getting this thing done. So, what do when you have a great idea, you have lots of support behind you, but not much money? You go look for a sponsor or somebody who will put up the money. And they found that in the Brainerd Optimist Club. They put up $20,000 to have this place built, and they got started immediately. And they chose a site in Hickson, Tennessee, and it was just kind of a vacant area. They cleared a bunch of trees out, and they put down a strip of pavement that was 3,160 feet long by 40 feet wide, and they actually had opening day on August 11th, 1957, and it was a huge success. And it carried that momentum for several years. Looking at this awesome footage from Larry Rose, you can see that it was a pretty basic setup. There's no guardrails, there's no bleachers, nothing fancy. It's just a strip of pavement in a cleared off area of land, and it was the site of some pretty amazing action back in the day. You'll notice there's sort of a ditch on either side of the track, and that was kind of a dual purpose. That was for drainage purposes, and it also helped to scrub speed off a little bit if somebody got a little bit out of shape. But that ditch was also known to kind of upset the car and take a minor accident and turn it into a major problem. Like we see here with David Prater's 1933 Ford, which is a mangled mess. Luckily he was unhurt, but wrecks like this were just a chance you were taking back in the day. Without a doubt, my favorite picture from the original location in Hickson, Tennessee is this shot with the 32 Ford Gasser up against the 1940 Ford Gasser. Flagman in the middle, that's Johnny Morris, and he's flagging off two of the Chattanooga area's fastest cars. This place got a really great start, even though local neighbors started complaining about this place just about 30 days in. There's newspaper articles citing, the disturbance and the issues that were being caused by this rowdy crowd and this noisy bunch of people and noisy cars. And the quote that was from one of those articles was that it shattered the peace and quietude of the area. Fortunately, the track won that dispute. They continued racing for several years at this site and even began night racing in 1960. They installed lights. And again, that didn't do them any favors with the locals. So with the constant complaining, the Brainerd Optimist Club actually decided to move the facility. They wanted to build a brand new track and get it into a whole new area altogether. So they chose to go across the state line. They actually went to Ringgold, Georgia, and they found a good site and decided to pave a whole new quarter-mile racetrack. And at the time, you know, they were building a highway right through there. The Interstate 75 passes right by it when you pass through the Tennessee-Georgia state line. The drag strip's right there off to your side. So if you're wondering about the original site of the drag strip, it was actually converted into a small airport. And it continues to operate today as Dallas Bay Sky Park. And, you know, it's a small place, but that pavement is still there. You know, it's been sealed over, and it's been painted over, and it's been driven over a whole lot. But that strip of pavement that goes way off into the distance, that was originally Brainerd Optimist Drag Strip. So still cool to be able to drive past there and see that history right there. So the new track kicked off in 1964, and there was tons of big races there. You know, the Southeast was never really known for its dragsters or anything like that. We were mostly known for super stock cars, stock eliminator cars, gassers, some pretty wild altereds and altered wheelbase cars, and it's kind of the early funny car days. So, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of dragster activity there. It was a lot of big super stock races and things like that. And some legendary racers raced at this place. People like Robert Nance, Cotton Perry, Johnny LaBoose, you know, tons of well-known racers throughout the years, from the 60s all the way up into the modern era of this track. It's been a home track for lots of big names. The most significant change to this track came in 1976 when it was shortened from a quarter mile to an eighth mile. And that was due to 2 consecutive accidents that involved people running off the end of the track. One of those people was my dad's good friend, Denny George. He was in a 65 Chevelle, lost brakes, absolutely careened off the end of the track and ended up upside down in the creek. And just a couple weeks before that, a guy did the exact same thing and actually passed away. So, you know, after those 2 accidents happening really close together, that was the end of quarter mile racing at Brainerd Optimist Drag Strip. So from then on, it was eighth mile racing. And that became kind of the norm for the area and really became the norm for the Southeast, aside from some of the big tracks like Atlanta Dragway and Bristol and all that kind of stuff. There were lots of eighth mile drag strips and lots of purpose-built eighth mile tracks. So it was not out of the ordinary, and it was kind of a natural transition. Into the 80s, this track became known for some of its IHRA points races and some of the modified eliminator cars that ran there. You know, lots of really good door slammers. There's some really great video that was taken by Wayne Holland, and he's one of the track's biggest historians. He's got pictures and videos from this place dating all the way back to the early days. But let's take a moment to look and especially listen to this old school footage from the 1980s. It actually never was owned by anybody but the Brainerd Optimist Club. It's still actually owned by the club, but its operators have changed through the years. So, you know, different people have leased the track and operated it. In the late 80s and early 90s, the track became known for its pro modified races and its quick 8 races, which was kind of like a heads-up race between funny cars, top alcohol dragsters, altereds. And we've got some footage of that here, as well as some footage of some of the pro mod action back in the day, which was just extremely exciting, wall-to-wall action. The thing that got Pro Modified started here in this area is a couple of guys out of Dunlap, Tennessee, Wayne and Stanley Barker, and they built a car called the Super Toy. It was a Pro Modified Monte Carlo, and this thing had a blown injected big block Chevy, and it was wild. It had a chop top, it had cool paint, this thing sat super low, and it was a home-built car. They built it right there in Dunlap, and they made some pretty big waves as far as in IHRA Pro Modified, and of course locally. I mean, this car is a local legend, and it raced at Brainerd all the time, and it kind of encouraged some of those quick 8 races and Pro Modified races that came here locally. So, you know, very influential, very trend-setting type of car. The racing program is what really improved under Steve Longley's direction. And what he brought on was a little bit of money. He started paying money to some of these streetcar guys who were coming out there. You know, they might come out on a test and tune night or something like that. Well, he started offering them some money. And that kind of evolved, basically being one of the first tracks that was going to pay out big money for an outlaw streetcar race. That just turned into an industry all its own. And that's really what got me excited as a kid going to these outlaw races. You know, you just never knew what was going to happen. And luckily, Wayne Holland has lots of video footage from those days, including this coverage from the year 2000. So at this point, there was a lot of build-up and a lot of money on the line. And the outlaw racing thing kind of died off at Brainerd for a while, and now it's kind of back. It's really been good seeing these local cars go out there and compete again. It's important to note that Brainerd Motorsports Park is very susceptible to flooding, and this track has been underwater several times over the last 10 years or so. And that's caused by restructuring some of the creek and adding more and more businesses to the East Ridge and Ringgold area, and it has caused water runoff to be a little bit excessive. It has put this place underwater, and obviously that's not great for the surface, it's not great for the electronics, it's not good for any of it. But it's a problem that the track staff has to deal with on a regular basis. Another great memory from Brainerd Motorsports Park is when they invited Don Garlitz to come, and he came to one of the nostalgia events. This would have been 2013 when this happened. You know, it was really good timing for me personally because I had just written a book called Lost Drag Strips, and Don Garlitz actually wrote the foreword for this book. So, you know, I'd been communicating with him, and for him to just come to my backyard basically, you know, it was a really great opportunity. So I sat up there and I sold my books, and, you know, people were able to take them over there and have him sign them, and I was able to sign some books. It was a great day at the drag strip. And what made it even better is that after Don's appearance was kind of over with, and, you know, they kind of went into a regular racing program that afternoon, I was able to capture what is probably my best wheel stand photo sequence that I've ever had in 13 or 14 years worth of shooting drag racing and stuff. And it was Ron Lane, and he was in a 240Z, and I happened to be at the right place at the right time. The lighting was good, everything about it was just perfect, and I was able to get this thing just absolutely standing up on the back bumper. You know, it was a heart-pumping few minutes there because I knew that I had captured some really great stuff. And it was already, you know, one of the best days of my career, basically, getting to hang out with Don Garlitz, sell some books, talk to old drag racers. You know, it was just one of those really cool days, and it happened right there at Brainerd Motorsports Park. But I think my favorite event that happened here was when the Southeast Gassers Association came and put on probably the biggest and best show that I've ever seen. There was around 3,000 people there. This place was packed, and it was buzzing all night long. The people were just excited to see these 4-speed cars getting after it. And what really kicked off the night's action was Donovan Stott in the white trash Anglia. He got out of shape like I've never seen before. And even though he did tap the wall, he saved this car from absolute destruction. Wayne Holland actually captured it on this video. So just absolutely insane, and the crowd just went nuts. I mean, it was one of those things that, like, that stuck in people's memory forever. The current leadership in running the track is Stephen and Amy Farrow. They're longtime racers. They've raced at this track basically their whole lives, and they took on the leadership role with Ron Newman, and they've really put their heads together and they've spent a ton of money improving this track. Now, one thing that happened before they took over operations was that the Optimist Club put up the money to have the whole track resurfaced. So this track was actually partially concrete and partially asphalt, and that transition would cause big problems on big horsepower cars. You could just pretty much see when they'd hit that transition, they would just lose traction. And that was a big problem with our local racers. So they completely resurfaced the track. They did concrete to the 660-foot mark, and it really made a big difference. However, the very first big race that happened with this new concrete surface, it was the Dragon for Toys charity race. This was 2013, and it was a brand new surface. I mean, they didn't even have any rubber down, and the track was absolutely scary. I mean, cars could not hook up whatsoever, and it was kind of a dreary, rainy day, and they ended up just having a giant burnout contest right there in the middle of the track. It was really kind of wild, and from then on out though, once they got rubber built up, once they started really learning how to prep the track, it's turned into a great facility, great surface, great traction, and they've only improved on it since the Farrows and Ron Newman have taken over operations. They've gotten rid of the steel guardrails, they put poured concrete barriers, they put covers over the stands to kind of give you some shade. They've improved a lot of things in the last few years, and they're continuing to put more and more money into it. They're paving, they're doing more and more work. Every time you turn around, they're improving this place, which is what it takes to continue the legacy of a historic track like this. You can't just sit back and expect this place to grow on its own. You gotta put the money into it to get the people to come, and to get the people to come back, and to get the spectators to come back. It's really a cycle. So, if people stop supporting the track, the money dries up, the track can't survive. And that's really part of what is driving me to do this Backtrack series, is to shed a little bit of light on the history of some of these tracks and hopefully encourage you to go support those tracks and keep them running. These places have so much history right here. This place is what built drag racing in the Chattanooga area. Thank you for watching this. Continue to support my channel. Continue to watch this Backtrack series. I hope to continue giving you new content each and every week.